I was born with albinism. Growing up, I was always afraid that I could lose my life at any moment.
People believe that it's a curse.
They had this misconception of albinism as a curse, and they can use your body for sacrificial purposes.
Do you look at it as a curse or as a gift, as your parents thought?
They told me it was a gift, and I believed them. I believe I was a gift.
What did you understand of that experience as a child, as a 13-year-old?
On my 13th birthday, I lost both my parents. I had to seek for refuge in a different country.
What was that journey like?
I knew that there was so much more out in the world.
What does home mean to you? Chantal Zouzi, a refugee advocate, founder of Refugee Can Be, a TED speaker, an author, and one of the most formidable young leaders I know. Chantal, thank you so much for being here with me today, and welcome to Sustainability with Shreya.
Thank you for having me. It's really an
the
honor.
honor is mine. Honestly, the honor is mine. Chantal, you have such a powerful story, one that is laced with grief, war, displacement, loss, but also one that is of hope and resilience. Would you like to tell us more about that?
I was born in the Democratic Republic of Congo in a small village. And my mother gave birth to 10 children. I was one of the 10.
You have 9 siblings?
Yes, 5 girls and 5 boys.
Wow, this is gender equality in
there is gender
in the
equality.
family.
I think she was looking for gender equality.
Accidentally, but yes.
Yes. So growing up, I was just surrounded by, my brothers and sisters, and I was born with albinism, as 2 of my siblings as well. So this condition was difficult because many people in my village believed that they had this misconception of albinism as a curse, and that you will bring bad luck to the community. And also they believed that it was magical and they can use your body for sacrificial purposes.
People believe that it's a curse.
Yes, and that they could use my body for sacrificial purposes. So growing up, I was always afraid that I could lose my life at any moment because people with albinism were kidnapped and killed, and our government could just do so much. They were telling us to stay indoors because they could not do anything to protect us.
All of this just based on a superstition.
All of this was based on superstition about albinism, and it's just like, I was just a person. We were just people like everybody else, and just the difference of our skin color put us in danger of, losing our lives at any moment.
Why do you think people were afraid of this condition, and why do you think people are afraid of this in the first place, for it to be a curse?
First of all, there is a lack of just like science. People don't understand what albinism is.
Would you like to break that down for us?
Of course, because even my own parents didn't know why I was born with albinism. They just believed, it was a gift from God. They didn't understand the science behind it, the genetic part of it, because albinism is just, the lack of melanin that I like in my skin color and my eyes, which really put me in a vulnerable place when it comes to places like Congo and other parts of the world. I learned what albinism was in my biology class in the United States.
In the United States?
I was 17 years old when I knew what actually albinism was in my biology class. So really this misconception comes from the lack of information, the lack of understanding the science behind albinism. So basically, this was just the start of my life, the danger I had to face because of my albinism.
Do you look at it as a curse or as a gift, as your parents thought?
They told me it was a gift, and I believed them. I believe I was a gift, and so I really that's really helped me a lot to navigate my school, and other kids were scared to touch me. They thought it was contagious, and so I was really isolated in school because of my albinism. But luckily I got 10 siblings, so I really wasn't bored. so,
So
yeah.
but your siblings didn't look at you that way. Your siblings didn't really, they didn't have the same misconceptions. They didn't discriminate because of your condition.
No, my siblings did not discriminate, and we were both, taught by our parents that we were a gift, and my siblings were just really supportive and very protective of me. And as you know, albinism with the sun, we are so sensitive to the sun. It's easy for us to get skin cancer, so we didn't have any sun protection, sun cream, and so staying indoors was part of my life, basically. So anyways, growing up in the Congo, I was one of few girls who had the opportunity to go to school, because many girls my age were promised to get married when they were still
In the womb.
Yes. So I was so lucky that my parents believed in education for girls. And so I studied my primary school. And on my 13th birthday, sadly, there was a massacre that happened in my village. And I lost both my parents.
So sorry.
Yeah. And this massacre, so I and my siblings had to seek for refuge in a different country, in Uganda. And that's when I was introduced to hundreds and thousands of refugees. Before I met refugees, I didn't know who a refugee was. I saw them on TV, and it was hard for me to even to know that these were just people like me, until I became a refugee. To get one, really being in that refugee camp, I met dozens of women and children who were vulnerable to war, and women who lost their husband and now they have kids to take care of in this particular refugee camp in Uganda. And my siblings and I had to share the many experiences faced by displaced people around the world. We just had to learn to live in a constant state of struggle. We just, ate, kept clean, protected each other, and just to maintain some level of dignity and hope. But what really kept me going in this particular place was the hope that I will come back and help and make changes, because really it was difficult to keep on going when at some point I was like worried about what my siblings are going to eat. Like, how long are we gonna be here? How long is, this gonna keep on going? And when are we gonna go? Are we gonna go back to our country? Is it safe? Are we gonna get resettled? So we were just in the middle of all of it.
What did you understand of that experience as a child, as a 13-year-old, going through this? What was that like for you, and what did that experience mean?
First of all, my experience taught me to never take anything for granted. Anything. Just the way we see our parents every single day. There was just that one day that I was not able to see them anymore. There was that education that I had that I lost, and I wasn't able to attend school anymore. So I really learned to never take anything for granted. I also learned that anyone can become a refugee. When you lose that place of safety you once had, that's it. And really, I never would have thought one day to identify with refugees. And so when I became one, it was hard. So my experience really taught me a lot. I became a mom for my siblings, as a, you know, the middle, sort of like I was like the older sister basically, and so I became a mom, taking care of my siblings. It was hard. I had to learn responsibility at such a young age. I also became the president of people with albinism in the camp. There were so many people with albinism coming from different parts of East Africa, fleeing and going violence against people with albinism. And so I began to advocate for us to the Human Rights Commission and to the UN. So to get the protection that we needed and the support. And some of us really got resettled in other countries. So I lived in this refugee camp for 3 years, and then I moved to Kenya.
You moved to Kenya after that?
Yes.
What was that journey like?
It was a painful journey. Some of us were getting cancer. We lost 2 people with albinism. And so it was really such a dangerous place for us.
And you still kept going?
I still kept going, but then I decided that I could not just sit and see what was happening to my community and do nothing. I decided to leave the camp and go to Kenya, to another country, to seek asylum and support. So that was a big decision I had to make. And my brothers and sisters, I mean, I didn't say goodbye to my brother because they'll be like, are you crazy? Where are you going? Do you know where you're going? So I just left. It was the most painful decision I've ever made.
What gave you that bravery and that strength in that moment when there's so many intersectionalities, when there were so many other things that you were going through, to continue on this path and to choose this for the greater good, even though you could have been selfish? You could have chosen to, stay in that camp and do what everyone else was doing, which was to not talk about this. What gave you that bravery?
I knew that there was so much more out in the world that I didn't, have access to. And really, education was part of my motivation as well. Because living in that refugee camp for 3 years and not receiving education was the most painful years of my life. And so I had this hope of one day coming back and bring education in this place. And if I had to, in the camps, yes. And if I had to do that, I had to be brave to forge a path for myself. And not only for myself, for my family and for the community as well. So I chose to leave and go to Kenya and seek asylum in Kenya.
So I do want to know more about Kenya, you seeking asylum there and your journey to the US, but of course your experience in these camps and whether gender plays a role when it comes to migrant justice.
Women and girls are the most vulnerable in the context of the camp. They are vulnerable not only to these women were working days and nights to try to support their families. I saw the faces of women who lost the right to their own body because they lack access to financially support themselves. And these were so painful to watch. Children, women, they were the most vulnerable. Girls, just a small action like get water, because we had access to water, but it was miles away and they had to carry water in their back to bring it home. And that could put them in a position of being abused, just gathering wood to make a cooking fire. In the wood, they will get support from male one day, and then second day they will ask for sexual pleasure. So it was all like every small things will put girls in a dangerous situation in these camps. And so and some of it was cultural, some of it was, cultural of girls getting married at a young age as well. And so it was the most vulnerable place for girls, of course, and women. Yeah. And so my time in Kenya, I joined refugee that supports young girls. And these girls were from East Africa, around the world. Like, we all spoke different languages. We had to learn each other's languages to communicate. And these girls were young, 13, and some of us had 2 children to take care of. And it was just painful to watch, painful to see and hear their stories and where they have come from in their countries and what had happened to them. When we see war and the impact of war on young girls is just so much. Anyways, after 2 years in Kenya, I was lucky to get resettled to come to the United States.
How did that happen and what was that like? And I also know you met Angelina Jolie. Tell us more about that.
Yes, during my time in this shelter with young girls, we were told that we have a special guest.
You didn't know who it was?
I didn't know exactly who she was until one day she left, and then other girls watched Maleficent. And they were like, "Oh my gosh, do you know the lady who interviewed you? She's a witch." Yes. So.
But your angel in disguise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was the hardest part about assimilating United States?
The hardest part assimilating to the United States was so many. Like, I spoke no English at all. And joining high school, I remember my first day of class, they were like, "Grab the Chromebook." And I was like, "What's a Chromebook?" Never had a laptop before, so I saw everyone grabbing a Chromebook, and I did grab one, but opening it, and I was like, "What am I gonna do with this thing?" So everything was a learning process. I was like surprised by knowing that school was free. Oh, like secondary school was free. I had to learn so much. Like, the food was different, so from the food I grew up eating.
What did you miss the most?
I mean, I just miss the traditional food that my mom used to cook, but I had to learn. I saw people eating salad, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, they're eating leaves."
Well, I'm vegan, I will tell you this, and a lot of people think all we eat is leaves, but that's not true.
So yeah, it was really hard to assimilate into the culture, but making friends in school and so forth really helped me with the language.
What does safety mean to you?
What does safety mean to me? Interestingly, the first time I felt, safe when I came to the United States, when my foster mom told me to go to class, to go to school, walk to school alone. I was like, am I really gonna be okay walking to school alone? And it was the first time I felt that I was safe coming to the United States, when I walked to school alone and going back home alone.
That freedom meant
That
safety.
Freedom and safety.
What does home mean to you?
Wow. Home. It's so many things. I feel like I felt that just losing my home in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the only home that I've known, and coming to the refugee camp in all different places, I understood what home really meant. It was that place of sanctuary, that place of safety, where I feel that I'm safe, where I feel welcomed, where I feel loved, where I feel, and home, it's something that we can all create. It doesn't have to be one particular place, but you can make anywhere your home. And so it's really, I call the United States home right now. And so I mean, I'm just a world citizen, basically. But yeah, home for me it was so important to just have that place that I could call home.
Yeah.
And as a refugee, I lost that
Yeah.
sense of where is home.
Yeah.
And
And you found that.
I found that.
Yeah.
And it's just the most beautiful feeling to have.
Chantal, I want to end by asking, how are we failing the refugees of the world? How can we do better? How can we step up, and how can we make this world a safer place for refugees, not just from war, but of course there's going to be a lot more climate refugees around the world as well. How do we become better allies? How do we become better leaders? How do we have better policies and empathy, not just pity, but empathy when it comes to these communities and these people who have had no say in what they've lost and how much they've lost? How can we do better?
Yeah, we can do so much better. And not only we look at refugee issue as something that is going to be solved but by only government, or just, even individual people can play a role in supporting refugees. I know governments can play a bigger part in supporting refugees to find home, to find resettlement, and also NGOs and businesses can also do so much more. Businesses can hire refugees, newcomers in their homes. Individual people can welcome refugees as their neighbors and look at them as people just like you and I. Like that's, I feel like there is a lot of misconception, even in the United States, about who refugees are and why they're here, and the misconception that they're coming to take our jobs. But when you approach them in a human way, that proximity really, really helps you to understand who a refugee is and why they're here. We fail refugees in so many ways. Refugees have so much talent that they can bring into our countries, into the communities. But for them to have that opportunity to bring those talents, they need us, they need our support. And for me, I will say my own example, coming to the United States, accessing education, that opened doors for me. I'm here sitting with you right now because I had that opportunity to really have an education, and that is what I am working so hard right now to give back to other refugee girls in that particular refugee camp I lived in, to provide them education, because education will open so much doors for them. And not only that, it will empower them to see a future beyond the camp. It's like a refugee can be anything, but what does it take for a refugee to be anything? For me, it took hundreds and thousands of people that have reached out to help me, to give me access to incredible opportunities. And so this is what I think we can all play a part in supporting refugees, government, institutions, NGOs, and not one organization can solve the problem of displaced people around the world, not even the United Nations. We need to all come together. Everyone needs to play a role in this. And refugees, like displacement of people from their homes have been caused by so many things like climate change. And these are issues that are overlooked and are not really centered in the conversation of many countries. As they are trying to solve the problem of displacement, they are not looking into climate change. I just hope that even just the solution of supporting refugees, not only supporting them to survive, but supporting them to thrive. And that's where education comes to play a part in this problem solving for refugees.
Chantal, I want to know more about the foundation and the hopes that you have for the future.
Thank you. So with Refugee Can Be is the foundation because it's the organization that I founded to provide secondary education along with livelihood and leadership training for the girls in the camp to show them that they can break through. Because as I learned, a refugee can be anything, but what does it take for a refugee to be anything? And this is the question that I'm trying to answer with this organization. For me, it took so much, hundreds and thousands of people that have reached out to help me. And so it took education, and I want to provide that for those young girls living in the refugee camp in Uganda. And so that's a Refugee Can Be. Yes, and just the hope for the future. I hope that Refugee Can Be can provide not only education for young girls in Uganda, but in East Africa and around the world. That's my hope, is I can be that middle, like that role model for so many young girls. They look after me today, and I feel like their voices and their faces are just with me every single day. I see the problem of displacement as an emergency, and that's need to be addressed right now.
Chantal, I'm so inspired by your story. Such a powerful story. Thank you for doing everything that you do, and thank you for sharing such a difficult story on this platform. I hope you continue doing what you do. I wish you nothing but all the success in what you're trying to achieve and trying to make the world a better place. And thank you for being a dandelion and truly leading that movement when it comes to climate justice and gender justice in your own way. I hope this is an inspiration for everyone out there that, as you said, refugees can be anything that they want to be beyond that identity.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to be here and share not only my story, but I feel like my story is the story of so many millions of refugees who some of them would never have the opportunity or a platform to share their stories. And the more I share my story, the more I feel like I'm sharing the stories of millions, and that really is the really motivation for me to continue sharing my story and help people understand who a refugee is. We did not just flee our homes to easily be defeated by simple hardships. Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Chantal.
Thank you.
So grateful.